It's almost like as traditional four-cylinder sport bikes wane in commercial popularity, all of the sensible riders who enjoy a wide array of types of bikes seem to have ultimately moved on from tried-and-true sport bikes. They enjoyed the thrill of riding a four-cylinder out to redline on a highway pole, but have since accepted that there are more sensible, practical, and actually usable motorcycles to ride on the road. So now when it comes to a super sport rider, we're only left with the most die-hard enthusiasts who refuse to accept the changing tides of motorcycle production. It's almost as if the sport bike demographic has dwindled down to the most absurd cast of sport bike evangelists who will stop at nothing to ensure the whole wide world knows the R6 is, was, and will forever be the best super sport motorcycle ever created by man. These sport bike guys act like every new parallel twin, not-so-super-sport motorcycle was created just to cause them unending pain and suffering. They act like the R7 was brought into Yamaha's lineup solely to cause them sleepless nights filled with dread and anguish. But why? Why do parallel twin or three-cylinder engines cause them such deep, deep pain? The answer is so simple. It's less peak power. For a sport bike rider, when and how a motorcycle makes its power is of no concern. It doesn't matter if a bike is making 125 horsepower at 17,000, 19,000, heck, even 25,000 RPM. It makes 125 horsepower. That's what matters. R6 riders threw a fit when the R7 was released, and then they really went ballistic when the details of the R9 came out. 117 horsepower? It only makes 117 horsepower? Talk about a downgrade. My R6 makes 135 with my full system exhaust and tune. If they want to get rid of four-cylinder sport bikes, they're going to have to come pry it out of my cold, dead hands. Meanwhile, these riders pay no consideration to the fact that the R9 makes much more usable power and torque than the R6 just about everywhere in the rev range besides the very teeny tippy top of the range. So in 99% of riding circumstances, the R9 is generally going to be faster and more fun to ride than an R6, but diehard sport bike guys are incapable of comprehending that because the spec sheet says it has less peak horsepower, and the spec sheet is the law of the land. The problem with these sport bike guys is their bikes have more horsepower than they have IQ points, so they're just not getting the big picture. The fixation on peak power is so silly and makes very little sense for a majority of sensible motorcyclists. The new ranks of middleweight sport bikes like the R7, GSX-8R, and RS660 have been, by most metrics, wildly popular. A majority of riders, whether they be newer to riding or are pretty experienced with plenty of time to ride under their belt, have been pretty accepting of these newer parallel twin machines. These bikes have plenty of advantages over a traditional sport bike. They have more versatile ergonomics that allow for comfortable street riding, as well as more sporty riding on track or some twisty roads. Their 270-degree parallel twin engines are fun, torquey, and serve as a versatile platform that can be used across different models. This means manufacturers are able to save on R&D costs and ultimately sell these middleweight bikes at pretty affordable prices. The usable engines paired with some modern tech like traction control and quick shifters, and these bikes provide a whole heck of a lot of value for money, which is great because that's what a majority of riders want, myself included. So despite this era of not-so-super-sport bikes being superior to traditional super sports by nearly all metrics, diehard sport bike guys just refuse to accept it. They want high-revving four-cylinder engines and peak power. It doesn't matter if these parallel twins make more usable power and plenty of torque, because when it comes to torque, sport bike guys don't care at all. The average sport bike rider probably thinks that torque is a made-up figure created by the EPA to incentivize riders to make the switch from high-revving four-cylinders to torquey parallel twins. They act as if torque was invented to make riders more willing to accept new bikes that create lower emissions but also less peak power. They think motorcycles from Harley-Davidson are just crisis actors invented by the US government to propagandize the merits of torque. And now, true race replica sport bikes may still hold the premier flagship place in a manufacturer's lineup. There's no denying that they're declining in popularity. As the sport bike demographic gets smaller, the sensible riders moved on to these new not-so-super sport bikes or sport tourings or ADV or, God forbid, cruisers, or left with the most extreme ends of the sport bike rider bell curve. On the one side, you've got the guy who takes it all way too seriously. He's the guy who wears a tracksuit to the coffee shop, has racing slicks on his leader bike that he trailers to the local twisty road. On the other side, you got the brain-dead sport bike squids who wear flip-flops on the highway. The normal motorcycle enthusiast who just happens to ride a sport bike is becoming less and less common. You're left with these two extremes. The guy who rides sport bikes and takes it too seriously will wear full leathers on the weekend ride with friends. They brag about dragging knee on their local twisty roads. They're probably 45 and hang out with 20-year-olds. They crash every single track day because they are so invested in shaving tenths off their lap times because they never got the validation they needed from their father, so now they need to get it from the lap timer. Then you have the quintessential sport bike street squid who rides in tennis shoes and a t-shirt but rides a $20,000 leader bike. Like, your trust fund allow you to buy an S1000RR but you can't spring $200 for a jacket? For being so obsessed with technical specifications of their bike, you'd think they'd be at least partially interested in getting a single garment with a safety rating. You'd think these two types of riders couldn't be more different, but they're actually both living in the same sport bike fantasy world where there is no alternative to a four-cylinder sport bike. While they operate in two different social circles, you can trust that they all come together in the YouTube comment section to talk about how terrible the R9 is.
Folks, I've given away over 53 motorcycles, valued at over $500,000 in my time doing this whole crazy YouTube rigmarole thing, and this Ninja 500 SE is the new kid on the block. Make sure you check out Reamain and become a member for your best chance to win. You'll rack up your entries to win, and you can assign them towards giveaway bikes in the future, or you can hold on to them and then put them towards your favorite bike that we do later on. We've got another really awesome spicy bike coming later for this year, and next year we're going to be doing all the latest and greatest newest bikes, so make sure you're signed up and don't miss your chance.
Now, one thing you got to understand is that sport bike riders are so obsessed with power, they're willing to spend the entire cost of their bike on mods just to gain about 5 extra horsepower. They're going to have the full Akrapovic exhaust and ECU flash, carbon fiber bodywork, carbon fiber wheels, and the list goes on and on. It's like no matter how much money you spend on your 600, it's still not going to make any torque until 10,000 RPM, but whatever, torque doesn't exist anyways. But that carbon fiber fender is definitely shaving tenths on their run to the grocery store. And despite the absurdity of this, sport bike riders will go full-on monkey brain and mimic what other males in the tribe are doing. They'll start by swapping sprockets and installing lightweight batteries, and before you know it, they're all banging on rocks thinking it will create fire. And for the younger sport bike riders who spend their entire yearly salary as a pizza delivery boy buying a bike, they will hit up the parts selection on Amazon and just get the cheapest and most unhinged motorcycle parts and accessories. Sport bike guys would rather have Temu Rizoma mirrors and Chinese turn signals on their bike than ride a motorcycle that makes less than 120 horsepower. They'll talk about how hideous naked bikes are while proudly sporting a Toche pipe and Amazon winglets. Sport bike guys are always in competition with each other, which must be an incredibly lonely existence, as the same people who they're constantly trying to one-up are also the only people who even remotely care about how fast their bike is. It's like, do you actually want your bike to be more powerful, or do you just want to all be able to tell your boys how powerful it is? Did you buy a leader bike because you, quote, outgrew your 600, or because all of your buddies ride leader bikes and keep bragging about that 200 horsepower they have on tap? The experience of a sport bike rider seems very singularly focused. They're missing out on so many other aspects of motorcycle riding. Sport bike riders just have this collective hive mind where the standards and expectations for motorcycles are limited to their highly specific value system, separate of the general understanding of the motorcycle community at large. Sure, like 30 years ago, there weren't as many options for fast and sporty bikes. Sport bikes were kind of the be-all, end-all for performance. But now, there's lots of bikes that are fast, fun, and well-made and provide a riding experience that's realistic and practical and plenty capable for average street riders. But regardless of this, sport bike guys share the collective idea that they just can't have any fast bike. They need the fastest bike. They need the screaming 4-cylinder. They need the highly committed ergonomics and full fairings. And sport bike guys scoff at hyper-naked motorcycles, complaining at how bad the wind is on the freeway, without pausing for a second to acknowledge how bad traditional sport bikes are at pretty much everything but highway riding or brief runs on a twisty road. Now, these riders are willing to make so many compromises in order to say their bike makes however much horsepower. Uncomfortable ergonomics, impractical power delivery, and expensive insurance is a small price to pay to be able to tell their friends they went 186 on their way to work the other day. The outrage that these guys express on the new era of parallel twin or 3-cylinder supersports, despite the fact that they offer countless advantages for 99% of riders, is indicative of some sort of insecurity. They feel like manufacturers don't understand. Other riders don't understand. No one but the big-brained sport bike guys understand that 4-cylinder bikes are God's gifts to Earth and anything else is remarkably inferior. Well, newsflash, you're not a professional racer. You're likely never going to be a professional racer. You don't need a leader bike for the street. The R6, while being a great supersport race bike, is not the best bike to ever exist. Outside of racetracks, there are certainly motorcycles that do nearly everything better than an R6. And honestly, the R9 will be better than an R6, whether you want to believe it or not. The way a diehard sport bike rider talks about the new era of motorcycles is no different than a middle-aged man screaming at the TV during a football game. You don't think the people who are paid boatloads of money to make these decisions know what the hell they're doing? The oxygen must get thinner at 186 miles an hour because I swear to God, some of these sport bike guys have diminished cognitive function. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I hope I didn't hurt your feelings too much. It is all in jest. Unless it's your first time here, then you should already know that. Even if you're a bit offended, you know it's a little bit true though. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I will catch you all later. Fact: some people can remember every day of their life in vivid detail. The syndrome is called hyperthymesia. Goodbye.
Oh, I love being here inside of the warm embryonic fluid of Valentino Rossi. Me and him just sharing foods together. Maybe he's gonna eat some pizza or some pasta here in the hills of Tavullia. But you know where else it's nice and warm and cozy is this next episode of Yami Noob. You can click on right over here. I'd love for you to watch it. But anyways, I'm gonna stay here hanging out. Me and him might go onto the track later, but I'll catch you guys later.